Is
All
what
right.
you sent me what I send to friends?
No, that'll be the one to join. Let me grab you the link real quick for the YouTube one, or for Facebook. There it is. Copy this link. It'll be over in the private chat.
Oh, okay, cool.
Awesome. All right, let's get into this deal. All right, we are live. Welcome back to After Action Project 102. Tonight we are joined by Jonathan Willis of Gunset Training Group. Jonathan Willis is actually, before we do that, let me get into our important thing, our show sponsors, Locked In Grip. Have you ever lost that perfect grip after shooting multiple rounds, or had your sweaty grip diminish your ability to hang on to your firearm in different weather conditions? Locked In Grip is a grip enhancer that keeps your hands free of moisture to create a slip-free connection to the action of shooting your firearm. Locked In Grip liquid shooting sports chalk is made for shooters by shooters. Visit lockedingrip.com. That's lockedingrip.com to purchase your liquid shooting sports chalk now. That sports chalk is awesome. It's something that I've had experience with. Andy has used it a bunch, and he was giving out at TACCon, when he was there weekend before last, I believe. And our other show sponsor is the Range Buddy app. We just rolled out the instructor marketplace there, so find vetted instructors for either virtual or in-person training through the Range Buddy app. It's a collection of over 160 shooting drills and so much more. It's available on iOS and Android. So check that out at rangebuddy.app or in your favorite app store. All right, so let's get into tonight's episode. Jonathan Willis, Andy, and myself, we're going to be discussing all things medical gear. Jonathan is a firearms instructor, a paramedic, and paramedic instructor. He brings an abundance of expertise and wit to all discussions about firearms and medical. He created and developed Gunset Training Group's Real-World Trauma Course, a course that is designed to equip everyone with the skills necessary to have a positive impact on the outcome of traumatic injuries. In real-world trauma, Jonathan bridges the gap between teachings of emergency medical service and the civilian carrier world, making it accessible and applicable to everyday citizens like you and me. Whether you're driving a car, enjoying outdoor adventures, doing yard work, or simply stepping out of your home, the teachings of that class are invaluable, especially for those who carry a firearm on their person every day. His credentials speak volumes about his dedication to being a go-to expert in both the realms of firearms and medical. He has trained with leading groups across the country, including Tactical Defense Institute, Active Response Training, CSAT, and many more. His expertise spans various disciplines, from defensive pistol training to swift-water rescue, incident response to terrorist bombings, and advanced trauma life support. Certified in defensive disciplines ranging from tactical shotgun, I don't know what that is, that's a new thing, tactical shotgun to extreme close quarters combat, Jonathan is a true authority in his fields. His passion for teaching and his extensive experience make him the perfect guide to navigate real-world trauma response. Tonight, we'll be having an open discussion on all things medical and some things firearms. Jonathan, do us a favor, fill in those gaps for us. Talk to us a little bit about what got you into the firearms training space and the medical training space for those viewers that didn't watch any of our previous episodes with you.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeremy. Good to see you, Andy. I came into the firearms world, like we've discussed before, kind of in a different way. My background is a paramedic, and kind of writing curriculum to make civilians understand trauma management is the way I kind of got into this. I'd been training up and understand and learning about firearms. I'd really gotten into that, and then as I was coming up, I'd been able to start teaching civilians. I was teaching with some other instructors of note, and coming up in that realm, and that was kind of my foot in the door in the instructional realm, and it just kind of took off from there, and I've been very fortunate for it to grow to what it is now with Gunset, and I also am fortunate to be teaching now at the Tactical Defense Institute, and I get to do a lot of great things with a lot of great people, and I'm very fortunate for that. So I have a lot of great fun with a lot of great people. So I'm thankful for that.
That's awesome. We had you on before to review as a student in a firearms course, and then we had you on recently to discuss your real world trauma course. And tonight, tonight's episode is brought to you by, I guess, some poor medical gear and the inclination for companies and people, for companies to introduce, create solutions for problems that people aren't really having, and pump out some inadequate and unnecessary medical gear. So Andy was like, "Hey man, I think it's a great time to have Jonathan on to discuss medical gear specifically." So let's start the conversation off with tourniquets. Is there a current need for new tourniquets?
Yeah, I've always been kind of an outlier in the sense that I don't know. I'm not really afraid to speak my mind. I don't really. I'm not on the streets anymore as a firefighter, so there's not really anyone who can get me in trouble. I can say what I feel about product. No one's gonna write me up anymore. I work for myself. I teach for myself. So if I don't like something, I have an obligation to say it. I put the work in. I do a lot of research on product for the end user. I teach to the end user. Given that my clients are citizens, I'm trying to empower citizens. So when I take up a product, say a new tourniquet, the new generation of a soft T or a Cat Gen 7 or whatever, it's my obligation to put a ton of reps on a product. So I can put them in the hands of students and say, what do you think? Or not just tell them that something is good or something sucks. Actually put it in their hands and let them decide if something is good or if something sucks. And most recently, I think I got Andy's attention with a video I dropped recently that caused a great deal of butthurt with several people. And that was with the ETQs, and most specifically the ETQ, EDC ETQ. This little bugger caused a lot of problems for me. Got a lot of people pretty mad at me when I dropped the video crapping on this thing, and it wasn't a kind of a spur of the moment thing. I bought several of these and spent about 10 months deciding whether I was going to crap on this or not, and put a lot of reps in it. I've been a paramedic for 25 years. I've been a paramedic instructor for 25 of those, and I've been teaching both professionally to paramedics and EMTs and in that realm for a long time, but I also teach civilians for a long time. And I've been putting these in the hands of students and myself and other people for a while. And the resounding response to it is it sucks for a lot of reasons, as compared to the hundreds of reps I watch students do with cat tourniquets and other committee on TCCC recommended tourniquets and other options out there. This tourniquet has been universally hated for many reasons, not limited to its performance, its construction, its ergonomics, and a lot of the gimmicky things that they offer in it with. It's just been a bad product. So will it perform at certain levels? Likely so, but when there's better things out there that are more proven, the cat tourniquet, the soft T, those things have been saving lives for a long time. I'm of the mindset that the years of in theater combat and wars since 9/11, where people have fought and been wounded and given their lives, and the science that's gone into tourniquet use since that time, and the improvements that have been made in these tools that we now know have benefited us, and we have all these reps that have benefited us. For something to just come along and be like, oh, this is the new thing, it's not that simple. And I think to just take something new for the sake of it being new, the new thing, that's not how it works. It's not that simple. So like you were alluding to, just the new thing, because the new fancy engineering a solution to a problem that didn't exist. That's what I want people to just kind of avoid, diluting the gene pool of tourniquets when there's proven solutions out there, so to speak. I'm not really into that. So,
well, let's go into a little bit further on this ETQ, right?
Yeah.
So what was the intent that they designed this thing? Why, I guess, is the biggest question. Why did this ETQ come about, other than like, hey, here's my new thing that I can make money on? What's the general purpose comparison to the other ones that work?
I couldn't begin to suppose that. I couldn't speak to anything other than, supposing just to grab at market share. As I study it, as I look at it, and I'm trying to mess with it, there's nothing necessarily groundbreaking about this tool. They put some gimmicks into it. It's funny when you look at it, and a lot of students will ask me, here's an example of it. They'll be like, why is there a level on it? That's a glow stick. There's a glow stick in it, which is kind of a funny gimmick. But when you're working with it, there's nothing that's necessarily an improvement in its function or form. There's a lot of ergonomically, there's a lot of just disadvantages in the way it performs as compared to a cat or a soft T. There's nothing that's necessarily an improvement. I can't speak to their intentions or anything like that. I don't know. I don't know what the reason a lot of people do a lot of things.
So I mean, it looks a little smaller, right? Like the windlass looks smaller on the video. It's teeny do you think tiny. Maybe it was designed to be more compact, maybe, and more carryable?
Yeah. Well, that's this one. This one is the compact one.
Okay.
That's the ETQ EDC. That's the 1-inch wide version. That's the one that's supposed to fit in a pistol mag. So it's much, much smaller. But what you gain is not that significant compared to, say, a flat packed soft T. And this is a Filster flat pack kit. Like what you gain is not that significant, when you look at it comparatively.
It almost looks a little wider.
Yeah. So when people actually bother to learn techniques with proven tools like this, like the solutions are already out there. Just learn them. Look at companies like Filster. Look at methods that are already out there to flat pack and appropriately carry proven tools. The methods are already out there to carry good equipment. I EDC a cat tourniquet every day. I have a method. If I'm wearing pants, I wear an ankle kit every day. This is an ankle kit that I carry by a company. This one is Riker nylon gear. That's a kit I really, really like. Riker nylon gear. This is a cat tourniquet, 2 compressed gauze, an elastic bandage, chest seals, and trauma shears, and a nasopharyngeal airway on my ankle. And if I'm wearing shorts, I'm carrying almost the same loadout inside the waistband. Again, a cat tourniquet. So I carry all that every day, no matter what. And it's just a matter of finding a solution with good tools. And this for me wasn't it. So I put that out there because I feel an obligation to help people find a solution that that meets the need and is the most effective tool for these most emergent situations. Because in my years of teaching, the quality tourniquets are the ones that have the highest probability of success. They're the easiest to teach the highest number of people, and they have the highest probability of success in the most stressful scenarios for folks.
For me, anytime I see a company put out something that's disingenuous, it just kind of ruins it for me. There's one of the big training companies. It's not the NRA, believe it or not. In their medical gear, they were, they have an instructor like trauma course or whatever that they teach, and then that kit was a rat's tourniquet, and I'm like,
woo,
yeah, you just, for me,
you're done.
Yeah, I'm not a super well informed consumer, but I'm well informed enough to know that if you're putting shoddy gear, if you're peddling shoddy gear to your instructors and expecting them to peddle it out there to the masses,
right,
you're just you what little respect or reputation you had is just gone. And it's just you're trying to capitalize on a market, and it at the potential expense of somebody's lives, right? And I saw that people were making a big stink about, I think it saves you 1/4 of an inch or an inch on the width, like the EDC one, because I think they were like, okay, yeah, we don't really, there's not a need for the full size whatever, right? But this EDC one that can fit in a pistol mag, it's a little bit thinner.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how the internals of like a cat T are actually the same width, and it's like, well, that's not it's not apples to apples comparison. It's not like the cat or the SWAT or the soft T, they just have extra material for no benefit. That's not. It's like, hey, they're just going to waste money.
Yeah. That argument irks me. The internal ribboning of the cat argument compared to the ETQ EDC argument really irks me, because they will at one side say, well, this is the same width as the internals of the cat. But then they'll say in the next breath, well, of course we're not as good as the cat because we're thinner. But then they'll say we're is as wide as the functional component of the cat, right? But then they will completely miss the mark of how the cat truly functions circumferentially, right? When you apply the cat appropriately in its initial application, they completely ignore the fact that the material is circumferentially tight, and it distributes its forces widthwise beyond the 1 inch of the internal ribboning to the extremes of the 1.5 inch wide external material, right? So it's like it's a bogus comparison. The way they kind of the way they kind of argue the width discussion, you know. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you bring up a good point to the 1 inch versus 1.5 inch discussion. That point kind of gets in my craw a little bit.
Yeah, it's these tourniquets have been tested on thousands upon thousands upon thousands of traumatic injuries, and they've been proven to work. And it's not like it's not like the 1.5 inches is an arbitrary number they came up with.
Right.
If they could save material cost by a third, I'm sure they would. And they're like, no, hey, let's get to 1.5 inches. I'd imagine that's probably the minimum or close to the minimum viable width of a tourniquet.
There's a formula. There's math involved in compressive forces.
And you have some. I'm like, all right, guys. Hey, why don't you? If they would have spent that energy and effort into R&Ding some ways to creatively carry it, they probably would have had a better outcome and a better use of that material. We have the solution, right? They're not expensive. It's not like you're out there, you're buying a $70 tourniquet and they introduced a $30 tourniquet to the market. They're cheap.
Yeah.
And people still try to save money by buying Amazon knockoffs.
Right. And don't get me wrong. I'm not out here to shit on these people, or excuse me. Am I allowed to say that?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm not out here to shit on these people's dream or anything like that. And when I got these tourniquets in hand, both versions, their mag version and their 1.5 wide version, I was like, okay, it is what it is. But do your thing. But the fact that they cost as much as a cat tourniquet or a soft T, like, come on, man. Like those are they are the same price as, the proven, life-saving everyday tourniquets that are around the world every day. The cat tourniquet and the soft T, the soft T. The Committee on TCCC recommended tourniquets that are out there doing the work, they are at that price point. If that tourniquet was a $15 tourniquet that it probably should be, it is what you would expect it to be. But they're playing up there with the big boys like they're one of those. It's kind of, they're punching out of their weight class, so to speak.
Yeah, it reminds me of the movie Something About Mary. I don't know if you guys seen that, where he's driving and the guy's like, "Hey, you seen that show or that workout, like 8-minute abs? I came up with a better one, 7-minute abs. That's gonna do it, right?" I don't know. I kind of feel like that's what it is,
right? But when you're talking about empowering civilians, and that's my end game. That's my end game, is to help civilians with the clearest answer to what they can do. I want them to have the least distraction in understanding the MARCH acronym to solve traumatic injury problems. And, in the medical things we get into in our class as well. But I don't want them to have a bunch of distractions. I want them to have the best tools at their disposal, without a bunch of distractions of the internet and advertising and like Facebook advertising, like all the rhino gear and all the crap that's hitting them on Amazon or on eBay or on Facebook. I want to put it in front of them, put it in their hands, and make them know what's good.
I agree with that. It's kind of like what irks me is, the holsters you see all the way through Facebook, all these horrible trash holsters. It's the same thing that irks you with these tourniquets. But to kind of just change the direction a little bit, you mentioned how you carry your tourniquet every day. You have an ankle one, or you carry inside the waistband. Mm-hmm. I've been teaching now going on 10 years. And in the beginning of that, there was not a lot of talk about medical. There was not a lot of talk about tourniquets. And one day it just seemed like it turned on, right? Mm-hmm. And so I see everybody now, all the classes, all the range days, all the tactical stuff, all the competitions, everybody's got a tourniquet on them somewhere, bag, medical bag, everything, right? So I guess answer the question for me, Jonathan, is it really needed? Like, did we all of a sudden we turn this corner and now everybody needs a tourniquet?
Yeah, we do. And in a lot of ways, we always did. I tell people flat out that if you're on the range and you don't have at minimum a tourniquet on your person, you're wrong. And if you don't have it on your person, I ask folks at the beginning of anytime I teach, anytime I do anything, I say, who here's carrying a gun? Who here's, and obviously a ton of hands go up. Who here's adopted the armed lifestyle? And when 9 out of 10 people in the class are carrying a gun, and I say, who's carrying a tourniquet? And it's usually 1 or 0, and it's probably it's always 1 because I'm in the room, but and other than that, it's usually 0. And knowing that all of these people drove a car there, or they work in industry, or they do different jobs, or they're in HVAC, or they do all these different works. They do all these different things for their professions. You got to get into their heads and make them understand the potentials and where they lie. So yeah, everyone needs tourniquets all the time. And moreover, I got to get them, I work to get them out of their heads on the range. I try to pull people out of the range mindset. Forget the freaking range. It's life. It's the world. It's everywhere.
What's some of the other gear? Tourniquets have the, and we talked about it on the last podcast, right? Everybody's talking about tourniquets. Is that the highest? Is that the piece of gear that we are most likely going to need for the widest range of injuries, right? Or is it something else? In your kit, you mentioned, you have a tourniquet, you have chest seals, you have gauze.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk about what everybody should be carrying on them.
Well, the reason I say tourniquet's the thing that everyone should carry, because it's the most difficult thing to improvise. I teach a lot of improvisational skills. Like people get pretty spun up about chest seals, which is a super easy thing to improvise. Galls are a very easy thing to improvise. If you have a t-shirt, you have galls, so it kind of expands beyond out from the, hey cat, hey girl, my cat's with me. I kind of build it out and away from the tourniquet. We'll start with my inside the waistband. I say galls is the next big thing, because for me, to keep it small, for me, galls in kind of a compressive wrap, because you'll see a lot of people carrying galls and like an emergency trauma dressing. If I have galls and a compressive wrap, I can make a emergency trauma dressing. So a lot of these things you can learn how to make or build or improvise. So in a class like mine, you can learn tips and hacks on how to improvise things, which is why a class is so important. So out from that, also a lot of this packaging, a lot of seals, chest seals and things like that, you can improvise with packaging. There's a lot of things that can be done building out from that. So that's why I say tourniquet's the most important thing to have on your person at all times at a minimum, and then build out from there based upon what you can carry, what you can do within the practical methods of your dress at the time. Like if it's super duper hot, what you're doing. Are you wearing pants? Are you wearing shorts? Are you like just t-shirt? You do have to kind of build your kit around what you're doing and what you're dressing. Like you guys being out in the hot as hell world of, you got to live your life, but you also have to build a kit around what you're doing. You can't just be carrying this giant thing all the time.
Not a bad thing to have in your truck. Is there any, what would be your level? If that's your level one, this is my immediate response deal. That's what you have on your person, your TQ, your chest seal, or your TQ, your gauze, right? But what about your truck or your vehicle? What's some other gear that we might want to think about having in our vehicle kit?
So I build out from this kit, and this is the kit that I start with. I call this, for lack of a better description, my foundational kit. And this is kind of the basic kit I teach from. And this is a North American rescue kit called the Public Access Individual Bleeding Control Kit, the intermediate level. And this has a cat tourniquet, an emergency trauma dressing, 2 galls, 2 pairs of gloves, hyphen chest seals, trauma shears, a marker, a survival blanket. So this basically covers everything in the MARCH acronym in a very small vacuum-packed container. So the MARCH acronym being massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulations, and hyperthermia. This covers pretty much everything you can need, including trauma shears to expose your patient, expose the injuries, and doubles up your wound packing gauze. And it'll fit in that side compartment of a door or something like that. So this is, for most people, is a highly capable kit that would fit in a vehicle. For most people, that's going to be a pretty capable vehicle kit. Depending on skills, some people will expand out beyond that. My kit's a little bit more advanced than that, just because of my background and what I'm capable of doing, and my extrication background and the things I can do from that angle. I will go a little bit deeper in my kit construction because of that. And I'll have a few more advanced components, and I'll also double the amount of things I'll have. So I do kind of scale it up a little bit. But to start with, it's something like this. That's kind of the minimum kit for a vehicle. Beyond that, I build to a family. So let's say you have a family of 4. For a travel bag, I build a slightly larger kit for, say, a family of 4 or 5. I build a slightly larger bag that would include trauma components for a slightly larger situation, and then also matters of medical need or convenience.
I like that. I told this story a little while back, I think, on one of the shows, but I rolled up on a motorcycle accident heading up to teach a class up in northern New Mexico. And, I grabbed my little life hack kit, took off running, got there. Guy was laying in the middle of the road, in the middle of the island of the road. And there was another guy there. And just so happens he was an EMT. So I opened up my little medical kit, zipped it open, had tourniquet and all those basic things you just talked about. And then I look over and there's like this duffel bag full of stuff. And I was like, okay, you're an EMT or certain? He's like, yeah, I'm EMT. I was like, all right, cool. Hey, I have limited skills with medical, but I do have some training. I'm here for you. You tell me if you need anything. Next thing you know, he's pulling out an IV bag and everything, and he's about to poke this guy and put an IV in him. And I looked over, I was like, hey, do you need some gloves? And he just stopped and he looked at me and he's like, I guess I should put gloves on, shouldn't I? And I was like, yeah. So I threw him my gloves. So he puts the gloves on, and then he gave an IV, put the IV, and I was like, yes, I did something. But I want you to talk, Jonathan, about having good or bad, having things that go above your level of training. Because you talked about how you expand for you, something like tension pneumothorax needle. I don't know the exact term. You can help me with that. But should I have one or should I not? Because I know for me, I don't know how to do it. But let's say we were in that motorcycle accident. EMT was there and he didn't have his bag, and I had one and he needed it. So is it good or is it not good to have something like that that's above your level of training?
Well, it's a funny thing. You see a lot of people having those on the range. First and foremost, for them to get it, you have to have medical authorization to even have it, to have ordered it. So people get it, and it's rarely the matter of them getting it to provide it to another person. That's usually not the thing. Usually they get it because they're usually getting it to posture as though they were going to use it. And the reality of the matter is that the relief of a tension pneumothorax is such an advanced thing. There are so many other things that the layperson should be focusing on mastering. If you focus on mastering the basics of trauma management, if you really want to focus on getting good at, being great at stopping bleeding and all this stuff, the probability of being able to recognize, for a layperson to recognize the signs and symptoms of a tension pneumothorax, seeing, tracheal deviation or hyper or hyporesonance of lung sounds, or any of these things, jugular venous distension. Most laypersons wouldn't know that this is a thing, and wouldn't understand really the landmarks to execute it. So to waste the time or money on tools such as that, there's just better things for them to spend their time on. I think just getting out of their lane, it really isn't worth the risk or just messing with. It's such a low probability that, and such a low frequency potential that I don't think it warrants them even worrying about. Definitely when you see people on the range with it hanging off the back of their blowout kit, that's a silly play. That they need to knock that off, because that's goofy. It's not gonna. The tension pneumothorax isn't gonna pop off so fast on the range that they need to dart somebody right there. Yeah, they need to knock that off. But I would say really focus on getting good at the basics, being decisive and taking a decisive course of action with, tourniquet application or wound packing and things like that. That's what's going to make the difference. Mastering those basic skills, mastering basics is what's up. I mean, that's where you're going to have the highest probability of success for a layperson. For mastering that March acronym is what's up. For in the basic sense, once you start putting holes in people, you are out of the realm of, the Good Samaritan laws and all these things. You are practicing medicine, and you are now opening yourself up to extreme levels of scrutiny, and you could get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, a lot of trouble. And
a lot of trouble. Yeah.
I haven't met a paramedic, and I haven't met them all that doesn't roll with the gear bag in their vehicle. Mm-hmm. Right. It's just everyone that I've ran across. It's something it's just habit. And it's because you're more likely to see a car accident. Right. And I'd imagine that's the number one thought. And hey, let me have this in my vehicle, because I might witness a car accident. And it's more of that, I'd imagine, and less of the, hey, there's going to be an active shooter situation. Looks like one of your buddy wants to know, speaking of dudes on the range, ask John about, your policy where you will only treat people with the gear they have on them during a med brief.
Oh, that's funny. One of my best friends is an Apache guy, and I was doing a med brief for Gunset, and a bunch of the guys from Apache were up there, and it was the first time this Apache guy met me, Zach Cox from Apache, and I was doing the med brief, and I said, I go through the whole thing. I said, but if you take a hit, or if you're in trouble, I'll do everything for you, but you only get dealt with what's on you. That's it. That's what you get. And this dude looked at me like, what the hell? He couldn't believe it. He looked at me like he believed it. And like I was the biggest jerk ever. And that's Zach. He's my boy now, but he thought I was freaking nuts. But I throw that out there every once in a while, and people look at me like I'm freaking crazy. But it's a pretty funny little morbid joke to tell people. But I'll take care of them. I got them.
But I mean, if we went about our lives with that's what the situation was going to be, right? Mm-hmm. How much more inclined would we be to actually carry the stuff on us to use it, right? And everybody likes to throw out the, hey, what if there's an EMS, or what if there's a guy there that doesn't have the gear, right? Like the chest decompression needle. But what if you need immediate medical care, and the only gear that's immediately available is the gear that you have on your person. Yeah. And it's, I don't know, like of the paramedics that I've met and I've talked to, they have the gear in their vehicle, but not all of them are walking around with this stuff on their ankle or on their hip. So it very well could be the gear that you need to save your life, especially if you're going to be rendering the self-aid deal. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more. Andy had brought up the decompression needle. Are there any other gimmicky pieces of gear out there that folks devote time, attention, or energy towards that really isn't necessary? And for me specifically, this kind of comes back to the conversation that we had in our last episode with you about the chest seals, right? That was something that in my mind, I'm like, man, nobody talks about chest seals, right? Like, why aren't we carrying chest seals, right? The biggest part of our body is, I'm more likely to have a penetrating wound in my torso than I am on a limb. And you made it very clear. You were like, hey, you have a chest seal on you. It's just not marketed as a chest seal, right? Mm-hmm. It's the packaging for the other stuff. So kind of in that vein, is there anything else that folks are worrying about carrying that really isn't necessary in the scheme of things?
I'm not going to say the gear, but I think something about the gear, and that there's something about the gear design that I think a lot of people don't understand. For example, I'm going to show you something that's going to make a lot of people just like lose their freaking minds. This is my my most commonly carried cat tourniquet, right? And what do you notice about the retention strap? About the windlass retention strap?
Is it cut, or am I seeing that wrong?
It is freaking cut, right? So, what is the purpose of the windlass retention strap? Right, the purpose of the windlass retention strap is to retain the windlass in case someone is moving to prevent inadvertent dislodging of the windlass and spinning of releasing of the windlass, so on and so forth, in the movement of a patient. All of this is in relationship to theaters of war and persons in combat, right? So I say that to say this. All of this equipment is designed in the idea that it's going to be utilized in theaters of war under extremely aggressive and hostile conditions, right? Often in a situation where someone will be jostled about, moved a lot, or even left, right? Whereas in a domestic application, we're not going to set a tourniquet and then like charge someone's rifle and then hand it to them and then bounce, right? So from a civilian use context, we can do things a little bit differently. Like, we don't have to be spun up about like vented chest seals when we're going to be monitoring the status of a chest seal because we're going to be staying with somebody. You know what I mean? So we can watch if a chest seal starts to bulge and freaking burp it. It doesn't have to be vented because we're going to be right beside it and we can burp it and put it back. So it doesn't have to necessarily vent itself. We're going to be right beside it. Whereas if it weren't, if we were to leave a person, it would need to be vented. Or if we're going to be dragging someone in active combat, we would need to have something like this still in place with a retention strap in place. So a lot of people get spun up about things being exactly how they were designed to be used in theaters of war. Whereas in a domestic environment where you're going to fix someone and stay with them until more definitive care comes to us in relative short order, as 911, 10 to 20 minutes usually. I think people need to keep that in mind. I think that's something that most people don't really realize. So I think that's something that people don't really get when they're thinking about what they're carrying. So they're thinking TCCC. I think, and that's another thing I think people are overemphasizing in the civilian context. Civilians are getting too spun up about TCCC. All right. TCCC is something that civilians are getting too wrapped around the axle about. So we could get into that even deeper too. But I think civilians need to think more about the civilian context and realize what was meant and developed for theaters of war and what applies to the domestic context of someone who just got out of a car wreck and you're going to be beside for the duration.
Well, now you got my curiosity up on the tourniquet. And did you cut that intentionally, or was it just happened? Okay. So in my layman's head, right, you're putting a tourniquet on, they got to be pretty tight, and that windlass goes in the notch, whatever it's called, really, really tight. So to be able to knock that thing out of there would take a significant amount of force, I would think. Right. So you said you intentionally cut it. Is just you're like, I just don't need it. It's one more added thing. Is that why?
Yeah. Because for me, it was a trade-off in that, okay, let me find where it was.
But not only that, if it re-straps over that, then it would block your. Yeah, like, you know what I mean, when you're applying it.
So here's one that I have not cut off. Everyone freaks out. Everyone freaks out if you carry a tourniquet like this, right? If you carry it with it closed, everyone loses their mind if you do this, because, oh my God, you're gonna freaking die. If you carry a cat tourniquet like this, you're gonna die. That's just, everyone knows that. That's instant death. But if you carry it like this, it's a giant pain in the ass, because this bit of Velcro rubs everything raw. It either catches on the lint on the outside, or if you turn it inboard, it just like rubs you raw on the inside, right? So, it's either rub yourself raw or instantly die. So I just decided to freaking cut it off and not worry about it. So the trade-off was cut it off, probably not instantly die, and know that I could get the compressive forces of a cat tourniquet and just not have the strap over the tourniquet if I had to use it. So I know I'm playing roulette. I'm playing Russian roulette. I'm a wild man. So,
if you're a competitive shooter, man, that's 3 for 3 on instant death.
Look at that. So look at me being crazy. Woo! So that's my tourniquet.
We've always talked about kilt in the streets. Now we're dead in the streets, and then
this is me. This is me.
Living recklessly out there, man. What are you doing?
People are gonna absolutely go nuts over this. So this is me officially announcing that I'm doing this. So
I don't know. I would be interested, and I'm sure it's never been cataloged or documented, but I don't, even in theater of war, I don't know, because once you crank that windlass down, and it's in there, it is not, like Andy said, it is not a, and I don't know what you would have to do to what for, like, unless you're deliberately disengaging that windlass, I don't know how it comes out.
It would take a significant amount of force. Not saying that it would be hard to do if you were dragging someone across something, but I'm not in the domestic context for a civilian. Like, how far are you dragging someone that you're putting? I mean, if you pull someone out of a log splitter or a PTO on a farm, you're not. Once you put a tourniquet on them, you're not dragging them anywhere. You're that's what you're doing. Most of the tourniquets I've seen done have been on a street. So where are you going from there?
Talk to us about the other consideration that you do when you're setting up your tourniquet. We talked about it a little bit, or actually it was in your video. I think it was one, if not the only positive that you had about that ET-QD or whatever the heck it is at the end of that strap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So every time with my cat, oh, sorry. Here we go. I'm backwards. With my cat, you'll see that at the end of it, I always fold it over on itself. the example I give is that if you ever peel a piece of tape off, unless you're a savage, you fold over the last 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. It's the same thing you do with a cat tourniquet. Otherwise, it can kind of marry into itself in storage. So I do that with a cat tourniquet. So the ETQ did that with the last bit right there. In both of their, right there.
Yeah. And again, it's a nice little addition, but nothing really life-changing.
That's like the best thing they did. Yeah. So, good for them. That's like a bonus. That's the bonus that they put in their thing. But yeah, that's what I do with my cat tourniquets. I've always folded over their little red tip on their Gen 7. That's something I tell my students always to do, so that when they do a flat pack, it doesn't compress into it, such that if they're messing with it with one hand, if they're doing a one-handed application, they don't have to, it's not so bound in that they have a problem separating it.
Maybe, what are we on version cats now? 7 now?
7.
Maybe you can send an email out and get that on version 8.
Well, it's funny. I wrote an article a few years ago, back when everyone was complaining. Well, it was back when everyone was all freaking out saying that cat windlasses break, which was total bullcrap. That was mostly because of counterfeits and inappropriate initial application of the cat. So they were saying what was I saying? They were saying that they were saying that they were all breaking, and I said that the cat generation back then and the soft T from back then needed to go out and make a baby called the Super Cat. And then a few months later, they released the new Cat Gen 7. And I was like, holy crap, they listened to my article. They read my article. So, and we got a thicker windlass on the new Cat. So apparently they read my article and did it. But I got no royalties.
That's the sucky part.
I got nothing.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, the soft T has a knurled windlass, doesn't it?
Yeah, the new one is here, I'll show you the new one. The older one had a much thicker, but now it's a little thinner. This is the windlass on the new.
Gotcha. So for those that are just kind of listening, it's just changed enough to where it has like a bunch of rings basically for a better grip. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I don't necessarily like, it's growing on me. Okay. I didn't like this tourniquet initially. I hated the last version, hated it, but this one is kind of growing on me. I got to admit it. I'm big on cat, but this is kind of growing on me, and but I'm objective, man. I've been a cat person for a long time, but it's irresponsible of me to not take into consideration like all of these tourniquets. Like these ratcheting tourniquets. This is the TX2. All of these tourniquets, I have to get in. I have to put hands on. I can't just be like, oh, I'm the cat guy, and that's what I push. I have to get all these ones in my hands, and I have to do analysis and see what's up. So, the Soft T is a freaking great tourniquet, man. It's good stuff.
What's your opinion on the ratcheting tourniquet? Is that kind of the same deal, more of a gimmick?
I'll tell you what, man. Okay, this is the TX2. This is a committee on TCCC recommended tourniquet. Now, I will tell you this: it's big as hell. Like it is a 2-inch wide. It is a 2-inch wide It's a big ass tourniquet. At first I was like, man, this thing sucks. They're extremely expensive. They're like $40 tourniquets, right? And I got it in and I was messing with it. I didn't buy both of the main models that are ratcheting style because they're basically identical. So I got this one in and I was doing reps with it. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't care. I think it's kind of dumb. So I went to teach a class and I had this guy in my class and he was like 80 years old and he lacked the strength and the dexterity to operate a cat. And it dawned on me. I was like, oh man, that's the guy. That's the guy who could use this, because he, with his limited strength and his limited dexterity, can go like this. He could do this, and he can work this thing eventually down to what it is, and he can just get his little finger and move this ratchet and tighten this thing down. He can do at least that. And that's what kind of got that for me. And I don't like the tourniquet very much. I don't think it's that good. But in that, using that example of limited strength and limited dexterity, I thought that was kind of an appropriate use for it. Otherwise, I think they suck. But they do apply the forces. They do the compression. They're 2 inches wide, so it doesn't take as much force to provide the occlusion on the artery. It takes less force for a 2-inch wide tourniquet to provide the arterial compression than an 1.5 inch wide tourniquet. So
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we talked about carrying every day, what should we have on our person every day when we're out there living our lives. The next big piece of medical gear that I want to talk about are AEDs, right? This is a conversation that we had, and I think it's a conversation that bears repeating. So talk to us a little bit about AEDs, their affordability, how practical are they for the end user?
This is a big deal to me. I teach CPR, and I actually wrote about civilian ownership of AEDs quite some time ago. I've been teaching CPR for a while, and in teaching CPR, the big thing now is extremely aggressive compressions. Not as much focus on ventilations, but extremely aggressive compressions, and to prepare for the delivery of electricity and cardiac drugs. I was coming home from a safety seminar I was teaching at, and it kind of dawned on me that I was in teaching these people, like, hey, aggressive compressions and electricity, and you can save all these lives, and here's the statistics. It kind of dawned on me that in a lot of ways I was full of shit, because I was telling all these people how this aggressive compressions and all this stuff, and I got to thinking about my gun safe, and knowing that like the highest end AED was like barely over $2,000 at the time. And I knew that in my gun safe, there were things that were at or above $2,000 that I hadn't touched in years. And like I felt convicted in that, I'd been on the streets for 20 years as a paramedic, and I know how long it takes EMS to get to a house in my district. I know how long it takes the national average to get to the scene of a cardiac arrest. And I realized that I wasn't backing up what I was doing. So I realized I had to get an AED. And moreover, I bought two. So I bought one for my house and I bought one for my vehicle because I travel a lot. I teach a lot. I realized as a firearms instructor that I was also full of shit, because we take people out into extremes, especially in the heat of the summer. We put people out that maybe aren't accustomed to being out doing serious physical activity, put them on a line to do pretty serious physical work in the middle of summer, and have them doing serious things without an AED readily available. And I bought two, so I have one in my vehicle all the time. And so this is the one. This is the one for my house. This is a Heart Sign 450. This is the one that matches the one that's in my vehicle. I wrote that article a few years ago, or a couple years ago, and as Andy knows, quite recently, mine was pressed into service at a pre-TACCON event, and I wholly believe that we are responsible, just as we are for our own armed defense, just as we are for our own medical and trauma. If we want to have early defibrillation, we got to get on aggressive compressions. If we want early defibrillation, we got to think about delivering it ourselves. And so buying our own AEDs should be on everyone's radar. We can do it with HSA money. Sell a freaking gun, buy an AED. People need to think about that.
Yeah, we talked about this in pre-show, and for those that know what happened at TACCON and stuff, I'm sure if you look around, if you really want to find it, you can find it on the internet. But first of all, my condolences go out to the family that happened. It was a tough situation, and for all those at Gunset and Apache too, because he was a good friend of all of those. But one thing that we talked about in the pre-show, Jonathan, was this hotel. We don't have to go into the name. You guys actually look for an AED there on site, and they didn't have one. So
Right.
Being able to have the ability to run out to the truck and have one, I think, it's kind of shocking and mind blowing altogether that we would make this easy assumption. Oh, somebody will have one somewhere, so I don't need one. Right.
Yeah. That was it was really an interesting thing when it happened, because when we called for it, it was this weird realization of things, because I had said a long time ago, you can't rely on other people to have it. You got to rely on yourself, and you can't expect other people to do this for you, and blah blah blah. And then when word came back in that situation that it wasn't coming, it wasn't going to be there, and my friend Scotty from Gunset, he's like, he just dove in my pockets for my keys, because he knows where mine is at all times, and he dives in my pockets and just empties my pockets and goes and gets it. And it's like it's funny how it turned out, but it was the blessing of the situation was that it turned out how it was planned. It went how it was supposed to go, in the sense that we were prepared for the fact that it could happen. And I'm very thankful for that. So from that experience, I just want people to know that could happen anywhere. If it happened where it happened, you know as well as I do, Andy, like that was the last place on earth we would have ever thought there wouldn't be one. Like, of all the places, that's the freaking last place on earth we would have ever thought. But it happened there. And that should tell everyone, if it happened there, it could happen absolutely anywhere. So to that, I say, you have to take it into your own hands. If you are of the ability to own an AED, and they range in price at that bottom from $1,300 all the way up to like $2,300, somewhere in there, get someone that can shock the life back into somebody, because if you can deliver aggressive compressions and put those shocks on someone, you can save a life. And it works. It absolutely works. Aggressive compressions and electricity brings people back. Do it. Like, sell a gun, buy an AED.
When we're talking about AEDs, what comes to mind is you rub the paddles together, clear,
Yeah.
right? And that's and it's not, and that's the myth of it, right? Like so talk to us a little bit about how that works and also the maintenance side of it, right? Because I think those are two big limiting myths that we have around AEDs.
If you look at this AED, you can see that you'll see little words that say too fast, too slow. It has everything. It'll show pictures of where to put the pads. It tells you everything to do. It tells you everything. It shows you everything that you might need to do. It talks to you. It tells you to calm down. It tells you everything. So these modern AEDs will tell you hands off, hands on, slow down, speed up. Again, this is the Heart Sign Samaritan 450. Tells you when to shock. Tells you to pull the green tab to get the pads. It tells you everything. They talk you through everything. They're so simple. You literally only have to be able to push the green button to turn it on.
Adult patient, call for medical assistance.
It tells you everything.
Remove clothing from patient's chest to expose bare skin. Pull green tab to remove pads. Peel pads from liner.
It literally talks you through everything like that. And all of them have some kind of voice prompt like that. They count for you. They tell you when to do whatever. They're so good now. There's videos of like 6-year-olds doing this stuff now, like following the prompts and doing everything like that. So they've made it so dummy proof for everyone that you could pretty much not have CPR training now, and just like, if you just followed the voice prompt, you could pretty much do it. But it's just such a valuable tool. And if you look at how small this thing is, I mean, it's nothing. And it's really robust, really a strong little tool. And a good company can help you with this. The maintenance on this one is the battery pack and the pads are on the same cycle. So they change out like I think every 4 years, if not used. So I take this out on the range when I'm teaching a class. Anytime we have a range session, it's out there beside the trauma kit. I think it really shows people that you're ready to take their safety and their health and well-being seriously too. So
absolutely. I took a CPR class. Actually, I've taken a couple of them, and like we talk about in the firearms world, the human, we're terrible at telling time.
mm-hmm.
We have a watch on our phone, on our wrist, on the microwave, and right below the microwave we have the stove, we have it in the car, we have it on the stereo. We're really horrible at telling time. And it's also, I learned, it's a little bit harder if you don't have the experience to know the amount of compressions to do on CPR and keep
mm-hmm.
it consistent, right? So I like that it has that on there, that
mm-hmm.
that alone is really going to help you be able to give the right compressions in order to give somebody that fair chance. And the other thing that I wanted to share, Jonathan, because I learned this in CPR class, and you hear this often. I heard it before I even took class. Well, not many people make it from
mm-hmm.
CPR. The chances are really small. And the one thing that the instructor really kind of opened my eyes about is, well, we have this number, right? We have this statistic, but it often goes underreported. And the more people that get trained, the more opportunity for people to use it, the higher opportunity to increase that statistic to let people live. So I think that's something important to say and to share, that go get some of the CPR training. And if you can afford one of these, I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, the statistics when CPR is immediately initiated, and AEDs are introduced quite rapidly, the statistics skyrocket. They go extremely high. So I forget, it's somewhere. I mean, it goes very, very high with immediate initiation of CPR and AED within the first minute or two. The survival rates go into an extremely high rate. So whereas before, like when I was a paramedic on the streets, people would always ask, like, how often did you get someone back? Well, that's a skewed statistic, because by the time I got there, you're usually like 10 minutes into the equation, right? And not very often were people giving effective CPR or anything like that. So almost never did that happen, because after 6 minutes, it's virtually impossible for anyone to ever come back. So it's almost never on the streets. But if it happens right there, it's an extremely high, or a much higher probability of success if you get into action quickly.
So you mentioned the heart sign. How did you settle on the heart sign? There are different brands out there, the Physio, the Zoll, Philips Heart Start. So talk to us how you landed and what people should take into consideration outside of the budget when choosing on an AED.
I went heart sign because of the form factor and the durability, because, I do spend so much time outside and being on the range a lot and things like that. So the durability and the form factor was a big deal for me. So that's a big deal for me with the heart sign. I do like the Zoll a lot for, say, like inside. I like the Zoll a lot. I like the Philips a lot for inside as well. Those are all great units, all good stuff. But for me, being outside and having more potential to beat it up a little bit, the heart sign was more what I was going to be needing for given the work I do. The other ones aren't going to be they're not going to take the beating like the heart sign would. But the other ones for inside work are going to be terrific. What was the other part of your question?
No, you answered it. It was, what considerations should people take or make when they're looking at buying?
Oh, okay. Another consideration people do need to take is dealer support, registration of the tool. They need to consider before they buy the kind of support they're going to have. So I do recommend people use a supplier that's going to have follow-up care and kind of prompt them to the maintenance cycles and things like that. And I do have a point of contact if anybody should need it. If they were to get in touch with me, I do have a point of contact that they could work with.
Yeah, and it looks like, on the low end average, or maybe it's the average, they're good. You're typically good for about 4 years. Especially with that heart sign, you said your pads and your battery replacing it 4 years. What's the replacement cost on that looking like?
You know what? I'm not really sure. I don't recall. I thought it was. I don't want to say because I am not exactly sure. But I do remember specific to the heart sign, they're the same. I do recall that a few of the models have a disassociated battery and pad cycle. So that's something you want to consider too, is the battery and the pads on the same cycle of change out. The heart sign has the identity because it's the same unit. Let me pull that out. Oh, shoot. That's not it. I can't get it out. Well, I can't get it out, but it's the same unit. It's all packaged in one thing. So they can't. There we go.
I'm looking at, there's a extra adult pack, and those are the pads. I imagine those are $228 retail, And then the pediatric pack, is that something that you would recommend having?
If you can, or you can run adults on peds. You can just place them on their you just place them front to back.
Okay.
But
As we,
if
go ahead. Go ahead.
you can just if you don't have pediatric pads specific, you can place them on the back. The pad that was here would go to the back. The pad that was here would go to the front. If you don't have that, but if you can do pediatric specific pads, then by all means. But if you don't have that, that's the remedy to that.
Gotcha. As Jeremy and I are over here Googling heart sign 450, you see it pop up multiple websites. So if I was to buy one, where would you recommend I go?
Because I'm here in Dayton, Firefighter Safe in Dayton, Ohio. Yeah.
The other thing, if you're looking at just replacing the unit in 4 years, it's $40 a month is kind of what the $1,800 breaks down to. So if you're looking at having a health savings account, that might be something that you want to start squirreling away for, if it's not in your budget today. The other thing, so Andy gets back from TACCon, and I'm picking his brain. I'm like, hey man, how was it? And one of the things that he mentioned is he took a seminar and he got some Narcan. So I kind of want to wrap up the conversation with kind of that topic of discussion, Narcan and anything else. And Andy, I'm going to kick it over to you to ask the question, because you're probably much better equipped to ask a good question.
Yeah, I've done a seminar now, so I'm a pro, right? So, but yeah, no, it was a really good seminar. Greg Elfritz taught it. Honestly, for me, I was an RSO at TACCon, and I was trying to find something to do because I had the opening of like, hey, I'm not really learning, or I'm sorry, I'm not RSOing, so I need to learn something. And I'm looking through and I see Greg Elfritz opiate overdose, and I said, oh yeah, we got to see this. We live in Albuquerque, see it all the time. So got into that class, and the statistics there for me were really eye-opening, how fentanyl and opioids has really turned up the last few years. And I've always thought about carrying Narcan, just because we have some close family members too that have had some drug addictions, and my wife lost an uncle due to heroin abuse. And something I kind of learned, that it may not have been heroin that killed him. It's very well possible that the fentanyl in the heroin might have killed him, because he did heroin for 30 years or probably more. And then boom, he was gone. So we don't know. Ultimately, the drug abuse killed him, but now learning things like, there's a percentage of fentanyl in just about every drug that's crossing the border, even some marijuana. To me, Jonathan, that was mind-blowing. And I often overshare. Growing up in my 20s and 30s, I was a knucklehead. Yeah, I did cocaine pretty regularly. It was in my pocket every weekend. If I didn't have an 8-ball of cocaine in my pocket on the weekend, it probably wasn't a normal weekend. And I thank God that I got through that older time to where not now, because the risk of getting involved in fentanyl and having an overdose unintentionally is quite increasingly. So I want to turn it over to you, Jonathan, and kind of just share some information for us as far as opiate abuse and the probably more and more need of carrying some Narcan in your vehicle.
Yeah, my background in this is unique. I was born in Huntington, West Virginia, which is one of the worst places in the country during the peak of the opiate crisis. And then professionally, I found myself in Dayton, Ohio during the peak. And I didn't know it. We found ourselves doing this work. We're running 10, 15 freaking overdoses a day, and we had no idea. We went from when I started as a paramedic, right around 2000, we might get one a month. Like it was like never, it was to doing, 10, 15 a freaking day. And it was just like, it was just the craziest thing ever. But we thought it was like that everywhere. And really the only 3 places in the United States it was like that were Huntington, West Virginia, Dayton, Ohio, and actually Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think those were the actual 3. Those were the 3 worst places in the United States. And I didn't realize that you were Albuquerque. But those were the worst places there were. And so I told you guys a little bit earlier, when I found out Greg was doing this class, I'd struggled with that experience for a while, because it myself and a lot of the other guys that I worked with and a lot of people that I knew, they went to a pretty dark place through that experience. From a human standpoint, as far as dehumanizing people, when you just get used to like just masses of death and just not caring, it was wild. I mean, it was a dark, dark place, and it was a dark, dark time, and you're just like, it was crazy. And after it happened, for me, it was like, wow, how did I get to a place where I totally didn't care? Like I would go through the motions. I would bring people out and, or not, and just be completely cold. And I was ashamed. I was so ashamed of myself. And that hurt a lot. And, when I found out Greg was doing this, like you, Andy, I was like, I had to go to this. And I feel like still that I have to make some good of my background with this. And I had actually already there's a program in Ohio called Dawn, and I'd already gotten me some Narcan, and I've been carrying it in my backpack for a while. So Project Dawn had already hooked me up with a couple. And Greg hooked me up with some Narcan, and I love that. But Narcan is an important thing to carry, because, like Andy, you know too, and a lot of people need to realize, it's not just junkies; it's freaking everywhere. It's in Ohio. There was a case locally. Young girl, student athlete, beautiful young girl, freshman at college, went up to Ohio State, and she was trying to study, and someone's like, I'll hook you up with this Adderall or whatever the hell. And it was freaking fentanyl. She's stone cold dead. It happens all the time. And it's not some, strung out junkie that was causing problems for everybody. It happens to everyone in every walk of life, and it touches everybody. So, it's easy for people to dismiss these people and not care about it. But it's easy to carry this, and shooting some of this shit up someone's nose, even if you just shoot it up someone's nose and walk away, it's better than not just letting someone die. Don't get yourself into trouble, but you can shoot some of this up somebody and walk away if that's the best you can do. Narcan's what's up. Get some.
Yeah, my mom had 11 back and neck surgeries over the course of her life, and she was addicted to opiates. I mean, she lived off every day. She had to have Percocets, morphine. She took multiple doses. There was a time that she was in a local rehab, and she called me. Actually, correction, the nurse called me. I can tell you it was on Valentine's Day. Me and my wife were having dinner. Nurse called me and said that my mom attacked her, and that they're bringing EMTs over to take her to the hospital. And for me, I freaked out, because if you knew my mom, she was the nicest lady you'd ever meet. She'd literally she had a little coin purse, and she would dump that coin purse out and give you all of her money if she felt you needed it more than her. But anyway, she was over medicated, and I was like, okay, well, what do we do? And for me, I'm not so sure I would have ran in there and squirted Narcan in her nose, but it just kind of opened my eyes. And Greg talked about that and what you're mentioning is we immediately go to the drug abuser, homeless, mental person that's out on the street, and we forget about our family. We forget about our loved ones that could be addicted, and then taking that into somebody that could have some nonstop pain that they actually have to live on opiates. There is still a very high chance that they could accidentally take their pills and be like, oh, I don't think I took my pills. And then they take another handful of pills or whatever it is. And next thing you know, they're hitting the floor and you don't know what to do. So Narcan, this seminar really opened my eyes for something somebody like you, Jonathan, has such high experience in. And I don't know, it was eye-opening. I almost feel like it was intentional for me to see this seminar and just add one more thing to my knowledge to make sure that if I have the ability to help somebody, I can and I will.
Yeah, it's a good thing, man. I really wish more people had hit that up, and I think Greg hit a home run by bringing that to TACCON. He really got out of the box with that one, and it's important work he did there.
What are some of the symptoms? What should we look for before administering Narcan? How do I know if it's a situation for Narcan, and what are the risks if I hit somebody with some Narcan and they didn't need it?
There's absolutely zero risk to hitting someone with Narcan who didn't need it, because it cannot negatively impact someone who did not need it. So, like, my son is a type 1 diabetic. And say, for example, he was unconscious from a diabetic scenario. If you were to hit him with Narcan, if you were to squirt this up my son's nose, imagining it would not harm him in the slightest bit. All this does is block narcotic receptors in the brain, so or opiate receptors, whatever the hell. It can't hurt him at all. What you're going to be looking for are pinpoint pupils, respiratory depression, things like that. So lethargy and all that stuff. So they may be, totally unconscious. They could be any of that stuff. But really, the pinpoint pupils are the biggest giveaway. Hit them with it. Like, as a paramedic, we have something called unconscious unknown protocol, where we're just going to, blast them with Narcan anyway. So if someone's unconscious and we don't know the reason, we're hitting them with Narcan no matter what. So
how quickly does it work?
It can vary. It can vary by route of administration. And so, yeah, that can vary. So that it's hard to say. Yeah, but it
can it be immediate? Because
it will not be like Pulp Fiction. It will not be. It will not be like that.
Like a shot of adrenaline.
Yeah, it will not be like. It won't be like when what's her name? Vega. What's her name? Not Vega, but it won't be like that. It'll be kind of a gradual thing, especially with the dosage in this. I think it's 4 milligrams. Oh, this one's 8 milligrams. It won't be like that. It'll be more of a gradual awakening. It'll start with an increase in respiratory rate. The respirations will start to increase, and their level of consciousness will start to increase. This isn't such a heavy dose that they'll come out violently. So it'll be pretty gradual over a couple of minutes, few minutes.
You mentioned dosage. Would there be a situation where maybe if you had 4 milligrams, that wasn't enough, so you would hit them with another dose? Or
this is 8, but usually the kit will come with 2. So if you hit them with 1, give it a few minutes, hit them with a second, because usually a kit will come with 2 kits, two of these, and so it's up a nostril and then hit it up the other nostril and then call it good.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's super, super simple. It's literally put up their nose as it looks. So.
Yeah, I like the making sure that their airway is open and actually rolling their head back.
Yeah.
So when you hit them with the Narcan, it actually
Yeah.
rolls up into their nose and
Like
doesn't
this.
just pour out.
Like
There you go.
this. Not like this. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good stuff. Jeremy?
Man, it's again already an hour and a half in. Is there anything that we should have talked about that we haven't talked about? I feel like we got into some nitty gritty on a bunch of good stuff and great information as always. But did we miss anything?
You know what? I think we had a pretty good. I think we had a pretty nice run through things. I think we were keeping it real. I like keeping it real, and I think we did a pretty good job of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean a bunch of great information. I appreciate that we didn't just stick to, what we're, the med kits that EDCers, everyday carriers should have on them. We went out and we talked about other stuff, right? Like it's very unlikely that you're going to need your med kit to plug a gunshot wound. Much more likely that it's going to be a work-related accident or a scene that you roll up on, an accident or what have you. And then at your house, right? That's where we spend. If it's not at work, we're spending most of our time at home. And the AEDs, their affordability and practicality and how easy they are to use these days, and really diving into that. And then wrapping it up with the Narcan discussion, I think was great. Because it's all good information. And with our podcast, we typically review a firearms or a firearms related course from the perspective of, a defensive gun use or performance-based shooting. But this is something that I think applies across the board more so than any other topic that we really discover any other topic that we really discuss. So I really do appreciate you jumping on and sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us and our listeners. I can't thank you enough for that. As always, it's a pleasure having you on. Appreciate your wit and your knowledge. Andy, you got anything before we get out of here?
Yeah, just one more thing on the Narcan deal. You can buy Narcan on Amazon. I believe it's somewhere around $43 for a 2-pack. You can go to your local pharmacy and buy it. I believe that's nationwide. Is that correct, Jonathan?
Yeah. There's a nationwide prescription, so you can get it over the counter at pretty much any pharmacy.
And then I'll add too, because Greg talked about this, that he got a bunch of it in Texas, and he gave us a website in Texas you can go on and you can actually order it for free. I Googled New Mexico and I found a website for New Mexico already that you can get Narcan completely free shipped to your house. So anywhere within the United States, hop on the old Googles and search it for your state and see if you can get some for free and just throw it in your truck. I wanted to add that real quick, but to wrap things up, Jonathan, another great podcast. Thank you for coming on and spending your time and giving us your knowledge. We highly appreciate it. Hopefully that people out there actually realize the importance of medical gear is, believe it or not, much more important than our self-defense training, and get some sort of medical training out there under your belt. You could save a life, and it could be your own or a loved one's.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. I jumped on, and it's nmharmreduction.org. So I'm sure most states out there have it. I'm going to order one for myself and, send one over to my mom's house and a couple other random people's houses. So, man, I appreciate that information. Everybody for jumping on and watching with us tonight, thank you so much. We really do appreciate your time. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. We'll see y'all next week.